Tutors and tuition managers, why do you do what you do? Is it because you want to help students that are struggling? Because you're good at it? To make a living? To make a difference? Or maybe you want to be the rock stars of the education world, pushing the envelope? Well, yes, to all of those things. But why do you do what you do? Why is there a need? Because we're working within a system that hasn't been fit for purpose for a long time. It's steadily degrading, and it hasn't produced excellence in decades. And it's not even about excellence, because there will always be exceptions to that rule. It's actually about engagement. Now, anyone with young children will know that their minds are full of wonder, questions, and curiosity. But something seems to happen as they get older. A NASA-funded study held in the late 60s by George Land was looking into the creativity and problem-solving skills of young people. So they took a group of 1,600 3 to 5-year-olds to see how they would fare. You may already know the answer to this, but how many of those 3 to 5-year-olds scored at genius level? Was it 10%, 25%, or 40%? Well, the answer was 98%. 98% of those 3 to 5-year-olds scored at genius level. Just let that sink in for a second. We are born geniuses. So what happens? Well, 5 years later, the same researchers took the same 1,600 children, put them through the same tests to see what would happen. And guess what? This time around, only 30% of those same children scored at genius level, which was an incredible shock for everyone. And 5 years later, they did the same thing again. Same students, same test. And guess what? The scores dropped even more. Only 12% of those students were testing at genius level. Most of the researchers gave up in dismay and disgust, but George Land himself decided he wanted to take it through to the conclusion. So he took a study group of over 200,000 adults to see how they would fare with the same test. Amazingly, only 2% of adults were testing at genius level. So what was the cause? Well, through his research, he discovered that in fact it was the education system itself that was doing this. Now, the events of the last 4 years have exposed the school system for the problems and the flaws that it has, pushing parents to pull their children out in vast numbers. Now, I was actually really surprised by this. When you look at how many homeschooled students we had in the UK back in 2019, there were 55,000. I actually thought that was quite a big number, but over the last 5 years, that number has trebled. In fact, more than trebled. We now have over 180,000 homeschooled students. And that's not even accounting for all the students that are still struggling within the education system. Now, the effects of lockdown are still being felt, and they will be felt for many years to come. Not only that, but we've got a new government coming in. Now, I'm not trying to get political here. We just have to look at the facts. They have announced that they're going to be introducing VAT for private schools. Now, that's going to mean great changes for those who are thinking about going into private school, or for those who are already in the private school system. VAT was supposed to be introduced at some point, but now we know it's coming in January 2025. And that will also be retrospectively added to anyone who's already paid school fees for the coming year. Just think about what that means. There were going to be thousands of students who were just about able to afford to go to private school. Maybe there's a family with more than one child at private school. They're going to be thinking to themselves, can I still afford to send my child to this school with all of these extra costs? Because it's very unlikely those schools are going to be swallowing that VAT cost themselves. As a result of that, there are students being pulled out of private schools left, right, and center, and those numbers are going to continue to hemorrhage. But the money is still there. Those parents will still want a good quality education for their children, and they're prepared to pay for it because they're paying for private school. But if they can't afford to send their children to a private school, what's the alternative? Well, I'm looking right at it. If we take a look at Google Trends, we can see that search for tutors has gone up massively since 2016. each high hitting 100%, and even in the off-peak season when it dips, each dip is higher than the one before it, showing an upward trend, which is fantastic news for tutors. So the opportunity is just going to skyrocket moving forward. According to Fortune Business Insights, the tuition business is going to double within the next 8 years. Last year, the value of tuition was 45 billion worldwide. In the UK, we had about 2.6 billion of that in private tuition alone. Now that's not taking into consideration the pupil premium costs as well that are paid by the government. So then you think about this year, from 45, it's gone up to 48 billion. That's quite a huge leap in a single year. Now in 2032, 8 years from now, it's set to be over 100 billion pounds worldwide, and you can expect to see a great proportion of that in the UK market. So what does this mean? The pie is going to be huge, and there's plenty for everyone. Here's the thing. If you're a tutor, tuition center, or franchise, your business revolves around a system that operates for only 38 weeks of the year, meaning that for 14 weeks of the year, you might not be turning a profit. That's over 3 months of the year. And during that time, you still have costs, and you may even have business costs and bills to pay. And what about your students? What are they doing in that time? Well, I can tell you one thing. They're probably not thinking about you. Well, that's the first issue. The second issue is that more and more parents are calling out for work to be done between the sessions when you are working with them. If you were to ask parents how many of their students do work between the sessions that isn't homework related, the number would probably be very low, if not zero. And the only issue with giving them that extra work to do means it's more marking, more admin, more management, more work for you to be doing, and that's just more hassle and more stress. Third issue is how can we communicate accurately, in detail, how students are progressing and where parents can be supporting their offspring in their education. It's all well and good to have positive conversations with parents, but often words just aren't enough. Accurate information about progress is a must-have for establishing the value of what you are delivering. Finally, we've got motivation and engagement, the old carrot and the stick. Now, data and trends are showing that people are losing interest in, well, just about everything, which really surprised me, to be honest. When I looked at Google Trends again, I saw that music, which was up to 100% search in the early 2000s, is now down to 25%. When you look at video games, again, I thought that would be way up there, but no, it's right down to 25% again. The only thing that seems to be going up is, well, a couple of things. AI and social media. The endless doom scroll. Now we know what social media can do. You're on it right now, most likely. Endless scrolling, it will suck your time, your focus, your energy. We have our work cut out for us if we're going to break those bad habits and forge new ones. So, what is it that motivates young people? Is it reward? Success? Being able to figure things out for themselves? Or fun? Or maybe a combination of all these things and maybe even more. These are questions that EdHeads have been asking for over a decade, and we're close to a comprehensive answer. It's a complicated situation, but it doesn't need a complicated solution. EdHeads can solve each of these issues very easily. So let's address each of them one by one. Firstly, EdHeads provides weekly tasks in core subjects, English and Maths, for students to do in their own time between sessions. The tasks are set at the right level for each individual student and can be easily adjusted as students progress. On top of that, students have access to the entire curriculum from Key Stage 1 to Key Stage 4 to give them practice in most subjects. I hear you say, but my parents are concerned about their children having excess screen time. Well, I can't actually hear you say that, but I'm imagining that's what you're saying right now, and it is a very good point. The thing is, we don't encourage that kind of excess screen time. In fact, what we suggest is that, like going for a run every day, or maybe going for a walk, taking a quick trip to the gym, doing a little bit of exercise every day is better for the muscles than trying to blast through it all in one go and burn yourself out. The same thing applies to the brain. Doing just 10 minutes, 15, 20, building things up as you progress is a far better way. It's much more manageable, and it's a great starting point to build those good habits. As you can see here from your dashboard, you can adjust the number of tasks and the year of the student for each subject, English and Maths, just by a click of a button. This means that each student's experience is tailored specifically to them and will help them to build confidence over time. If things are getting too difficult, take it down a year. Too easy? Take them up. If they're not completing their tasks within their set week, well, take a few tasks away. If they're getting their tasks done too quickly, then just add a few. It's that easy. Also, it doesn't end there. Most services can only offer work in the core subject that they focus on. If you can offer your students practice in all of these subjects so they can see where there are gaps, help them to expand their knowledge, or to offer them practice before an upcoming test, how much value would that add to the service you're already providing? And if you're thinking about offering 11 plus, or you already are offering 11 plus, well, we've got content for you as well. And we're always working on new content for tutors. And now for that second issue, engaging with your customers. Now, every EdHead receives an email each week sent directly by us automatically with a detailed report of everything that took place in the previous week. That gives you a reason to be communicating with your customers during those long summer holidays, the spring break, and the winter break. And if families are going away for the holidays, well, there's no reason why the learning should stop. Offering online sessions at competitive prices becomes straightforward and easy with EdHeads as a tool. You can have multiple students in a session, each one getting on with their own work in a breakout room, and the tutor can then move between student to student, offering help where it's needed. And all of that pesky marking you're worried about? Well, EdHeads does it for you. Not only that, but the marking is done in exercise, giving the students the opportunity to understand why they're getting things wrong, how they're getting things wrong. Educationally, that is so important. Imagine taking a test and waiting an hour, a day, or even a week before you get your results. The third issue? Diagnosis and remedy. Understanding and communicating progress is probably the area that EdHeads is the strongest. We know that parents like to see how their money's being spent. And what do they like to see the most? Results. Well, with EdHeads, they get more detail than you will find anywhere. Our reporting system goes into granular detail, and both you and your customers can access it 24/7. You can go from subject through to each topic and even see each attempt and answer to analyze exactly where students are doing well, where they're making progress, and where they need that extra help. It's like having an X-ray device that can pinpoint all of the problem areas. It can save time and hassle for both tutor and student because they're not going over the same ground they've already covered, and it can really fast-track progress. Before any session, whether it's in person or online, a tutor can spend a few minutes to look at every single report and see how things are going, adding a note to each student to keep track of where focus is needed for future reference, and even assigning additional tasks so that they know where to be focusing their energies. Targeted, focused, efficient, and powerful. So, how do we fix the motivation problem? Well, EdHeads is already on top of that. As you've already seen, using the reports to target where problems are speeds up progress and builds confidence. More motivation. Setting tasks for students to complete and feel a sense of personal achievement and accomplishment. More motivation. Providing them with lessons to watch in English, Maths and Science so that they can take control of their own education and feel like they're doing it for themselves. More motivation. But then we add an element of fun. Being able to play a game between answering a question or questions. A game that isn't part of the exercise and the exercise isn't part of the game. But the game does respond positively to questions being answered correctly, keeping the student engaged and wanting to get the answer right as much as possible. But if they don't get the answer right, they still get to play the game. And these games, beyond being motivational and engaging, can have their own mental and educational benefits. Hand-to-eye coordination, reflexes, puzzle solving, and more. They give the student a way to break up the work. For those with attention deficit problems, autism, or other learning difficulties, it's an invaluable tool. And the great part is, the more work they do, the more credits they earn. The more credits they earn, the more games they can unlock. And so the cycle continues, building those good habits. Also, they can use those credits to customize their avatar in any way that they want, with either realistic or wild and wacky characters. At the end of each exercise, as well as getting a mark for the work that they've done, every EdHead also gets a score for the game that they've played, if they've chosen to play one. And what do points mean? Well, not prizes in this particular case, but they do mean leaderboards. We've got a leaderboard for every individual game and an overall leaderboard for the entire platform. EdHeads can communicate in a very simple form by letting each other know how they've scored and getting them to engage with each other in collaborative games. And what does all that mean? More motivation. So, you get all this content and all that added value to give to your students and their families. Parents have a tool they can use to engage with their children, giving them a better understanding of where they are and allowing you to have more meaningful conversations with them, building a better relationship, which will in turn lead to referrals for your business, allowing you to grow into a year-round profit-making machine. Yes, I hear you say, this is all well and good and it sounds fantastic, but how much is this going to cost? For the general public, it's £2.40 per student per week. But if you're a tutor working with EdHeads, we will give it to you at just £2 per week per student. So if you think about it, even that is less than it costs to buy a cup of coffee. It's less than it costs to park at your local shopping mall for an hour, and it's a fraction of the cost of a single paper notepad. EdHeads makes learning fun, engaging, and easy for students and for you, whilst giving practical, objective, detailed reports so that the people paying for it have a clear understanding about the value that you are delivering to their families.